If this is our first time together, my name is Timothy Atik, and I'm the director of Breakaway here, and we are so glad that you made it tonight. Thanks for being here. I want to let you know that on June 2nd, 2006, I interrupted Kat, who is my wife now. I interrupted her life with a question. I'm going to go ahead and put a picture from that night just on the screen so you can see that night. But on that night, I interrupted her life with a question, and I will share the story with you some other time, maybe later on this year. But after a good amount of deception, and after a dress in a limousine and about 8 dozen roses, I found myself on a rowboat in the middle of a lake owned by a former Dallas Cowboy football player, and on that boat was Catherine. And on that rowboat, I got down on one knee, and I told Catherine that I loved her for the very first time in our relationship, because I didn't want to say it till I could put a ring on it. You know what I mean? And so I told her that I loved her, and then I asked her one of the most important questions that she would ever have to answer in her life. And that question was, will you marry me? And because I had her trapped in the middle of a lake on a rowboat, that made the answer to that question really easy for her. She said yes, but it was a very special night, very important night, June 2nd, 2006. But as I think back on that night, here's what I realized. That those 4 words, will you marry me, were actually an invitation. Those words were an invitation to 3 things. It was an invitation first to intimacy. Number 2, it was an invitation to imitation. And number 3, it was an invitation to influence. See, what I was doing in that moment when I asked Catherine to marry me is I was inviting her in to intimacy with this guy. I was inviting her to spend the rest of her life with me. I was inviting her into countless deep, meaningful conversations and lots of laughter and making memories on trips and watching Parks and Rec together and fighting together and experiencing heartbreak together and pursuing the Lord together, just to name a few things. It was an invitation to intimacy, but it was also an invitation to imitation. See, marriage is the clearest picture that God has given us of Jesus Christ's love for his people, his bride, the church. And so when I invited Kat to be my wife, I was inviting her into this relationship in which we would seek to imitate Christ's love for the church, and we would spend our lives trying to imitate that love towards one another. But it was also an invitation to influence, because God now was bringing us together so that we could put his love on display to the rest of the world. And so Catherine and I, after all of the years that we've been married, which is almost 12 years, we have had the privilege of putting the love of Jesus Christ on display through our marriage, first to thousands of high school and middle school students, and now to thousands of college students. And it's been the greatest joy of our lives. This is the invitation that I invited Catherine into. Now, some of you bridezillas right now are really getting geeked up about me talking about marriage and proposals. And so you're hearing that and you're kind of like, give me that. Like, that's what you want right now. And then others of you in here are like, ew. Like, you're just, like, you've decided you're going to be a bachelor to the rapture, and that's kind of your anthem. So good luck with that. It doesn't matter where you are on the romantic spectrum of life. This isn't a talk about romance or romantic relationships. But what I do want to zero in on, this is a talk about those 3 things that I was inviting Catherine into: intimacy, imitation, and influence. See, I believe that those 3 things are actually things that each one of us deeply desire. And I would go so far as to say that these 3 things just might be the 3 things that you want most during your time in college. Like, tell me you don't want to feel like you belong and that you're loved. Tell me that you aren't looking out into this world trying to figure out who is the ideal in wanting to be a little bit more like them. Tell me you don't want your life to count for something. Tell me you don't want to be somebody. These are things that we all want. The great news is that the path to experiencing these three things really isn't found in the 4 words, will you marry me? See, there's a better invitation on the table. There's a much better proposal that's available to us. You don't have to wait and wish for it one day on your engagement day. No, this proposal is available tonight, and it's from Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and it's to each one of us, and it comes in the form of not 4 words, but 3 words, and those 3 words are come, follow me. See, last week we started this series that we're calling #college. And what we said is, I want you to have a stereotypical college experience. That's a hashtag that we might use when doing stereotypical things. Like when you have a late night at Fuego, you might use #college. Or when you find yourself on a random road trip, you're going to need to end your tweet or your post #college. I want you to have a stereotypical experience. But I don't want your college experience to just be stereotypical. I want it to be supernatural. And so each week of this series, we're looking at 3 words from Jesus that can take your college experience from stereotypical to supernatural. Tonight, what I want to show you is the greatest proposal in the history of mankind, and it's found in Mark chapter 1. So if you have a copy of the scriptures, I want to invite you to join me there in Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1 is where we're going to be. Starting in verse 16, it says this: As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me. There's our 3 words, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little farther, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets. Without delay, he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him. So this story is taking place around the Sea of Galilee. What you need to know is the Sea of Galilee is the place where so much great ministry took place with Jesus. This is the place where Jesus calmed the storm. This is the place where Jesus walked on water. It was by the Sea of Galilee where Jesus fed the 5,000. It was even on the shores of the Sea of Galilee where Jesus restored Peter after Peter denied Jesus 3 different times. But right now, we are rewinding all the way to the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And his ministry began with a great interruption, because on this particular day, Jesus shows up and changes the trajectory of 4 fishermen's lives. These 4 guys, whose names are Simon, Andrew, James, and John, show up to do their thing. They're fishermen, so what are they doing? They are fishing. But when Jesus shows up, he doesn't just interrupt their day, he interrupts their lives with an invitation. And because of this invitation, nothing would be the same for these 4 men for the rest of their lives. I just want to tell you that that's my prayer for some of you tonight. My prayer for some of you tonight is that God would somehow not just interrupt your day, but that he would interrupt your life tonight with this invitation. And my hope and prayer for you is that nothing would be the same because of tonight for the rest of your life. His invitation to these 4 men came in the form of 3 words. We've already said them, but the words are come, follow me. The invitation that was there to the fishermen is here for us tonight. He is looking at each one of us saying, you come follow me. And this invitation is an invitation to 3 things. Come follow me is an invitation first to intimacy. That's what it is. It's an invitation to intimacy. Let's just get real. Every single one of us here wants to know that we are fully loved, fully known, and fully loved. We long to know that we belong. We long to know that we've been seen for all that we are, all of our imperfections, all of our insecurities, and yet we are still known and loved. We want to get past people just falling in love with a manufactured version of ourselves. We long to know that we are known and loved. Jesus is inviting us into that type of relationship with him in which we are fully known and fully loved. Just think about how things played out with these 4 fishermen that he invited into his life. He invited them to spend every moment of every day with him for 3 years. That means that these guys ate hummus with Jesus. These guys had sweet pillow talk with Jesus. These guys had deep, meaningful conversations with Jesus. They learned a lot from Jesus. They had tough conversations with Jesus. They even experienced heartbreak with Jesus. And in the midst of those 3 years, inevitably, they got exposed before Jesus. Their imperfections, their insecurities, their immature ways became evident to Jesus. But even in the midst of these guys being fully known before Jesus' grace overflowed into their lives. His forgiveness was real and present and active. His love and acceptance, his approval and favor was toward them during their time together. They were fully known and fully loved, and he's inviting you into this type of relationship. Jesus doesn't want to settle for anything less than intimacy with you. But here's the problem. Let me just identify a massive problem with this for each one of us. The problem is that relationships take work. Like, intimacy takes intentionality. Like, I absolutely love being married to my wife, Catherine, but marriage is hard work. In order for us to stay connected, intimacy takes intentionality, and the same is true with God. If we're going to experience the type of intimacy that God wants with us, it's going to take work. It's going to take intentionality, and I think some of us fear the commitment and the effort that it's going to take, and so what we end up doing is we end up settling for some mediocre version of the real thing. We end up actually settling for a distorted, unhealthy relationship that God has never intended for us. And so I'll just tell you this. Last spring, I shared with you guys about how this dating relationship I was in college wasn't the healthiest thing because this girl completely changed the way that I looked. And I shared it with you at Impact if you were there a month ago. If you weren't at either of those places, let me just remind you, during my sophomore year here at A&M, I started dating this girl that contemplated getting out of the relationship because she didn't like how I looked. And I knew that this was the case because she told me that this was the case. And so I allowed her to change everything about me. And along the way, she told me, after she changed everything about me, she said, "You could be a male model if it wasn't for your legs." And I was like, "Thank you, I think." And then she went a step deeper and she said, "You know what, I just don't like your name. I just hate your name because it feels weak to me." See, it's hard to laugh at this because you're too busy judging me for being in that relationship in the first place, and I get that. That makes perfect sense. But I really blame my roommates. I blame my roommates because I was in that 4-month relationship about 4 months too long, and after the relationship ended, my roommates were like, "Yeah, we knew that relationship was no good for you." And I was like, "Hello, that would have been good information." And so here tonight, we're all in the same room, and so I consider you tonight at least my roommate. I refuse to be a bad roommate like those guys, and so I just want to speak into your life. And for some of you here tonight, I'm going to tell you it's time to get out. It's time for this unhealthy relationship with Jesus that you have to end. It's time to get out, and it's time to get into the right type of relationship that Jesus has intended for you since the day that you were born. Jesus Christ will not settle for anything short of intimacy with you. This is what he longs for with you. He wants a relationship with you in which you are fully known and fully loved. But here's the thing. Some of you guys are in the wrong relationship with Jesus. And so for some of you, you've turned following Jesus into simply following tradition or following your conscience. So you go to church on Sunday or you come to Breakaway on Tuesday because that's what your parents have taught you to do, or that's what you think the right thing to do is in order to stay right with God. Some of you have turned following Jesus into following rules, and so you don't party, you don't hook up with people, you're a good guy, you're a good girl, and you do some Christian things. Some of you have turned following Jesus into auditioning in front of Jesus every day. And so you spend every day trying to be enough for Jesus. Some of you have turned following Jesus simply into following Jesus' followers. And so you're way more excited about hearing from Judah Smith or Stephen Furtick or Matt Chandler than you ever are about hearing from Jesus Christ speak to you in this world. And so what you're actually doing is you're living vicariously through someone else who has actually experienced intimacy with Jesus Christ. Let me just tell you, it's time to get out. It is time for that relationship to end. Jesus Christ wants more. He doesn't want more from you. He wants more with you. Can you imagine how different your life would be if you woke up each morning believing that Jesus Christ is in your room? Like he's actually in your room and he's in your car and he's walking with you across campus. He's there when you're studying. He's there when you're hurting. And his presence in your life isn't passive. It's actually very active, and he's committed to leading you to the best life possible. And he's longing to unleash power and wisdom in your life. He loves putting displays of his greatness and glory on display in your life. He wants to speak to you every day. Do you realize that God can actually talk to you every day of your life if you will listen by opening up this book? It's called the Word of God for a reason. God wants to listen to you, talk to him through prayer. He wants to comfort you when you're hurting. He wants to sustain you when you're doubting. This is the type of relationship he wants with you. He's inviting you into intimacy. And the cool thing is when Jesus says, come follow me, he's not just inviting you into intimacy with him, he's inviting you into intimacy with others. I love that when he called Simon and Andrew and James and John, he called them together. And they responded together. I look back at my time at A&M, and I'm so thankful that he gave me some guys to run with. Some guys who would carry me and encourage me and point me towards following Jesus passionately. Do you have those type of men or women in your life? Let me just say, you know what? There's no perfect church. There's no perfect friend. There's no perfect small group. Can we just stop the church shopping and the church hopping and the mentality that I don't need to go because I can just sit and podcast someone at home? Can we give up on that? And can we lean in together, join together, and experience the intimacy with one another that God has wired us to need and want? Come follow me. It's an invitation to intimacy. Do not miss out on it. But it's not just an invitation to intimacy. It's an invitation to imitation. The Greek here of come follow me is literally come after me. Jesus is saying, hey, get in line. Like file in behind me and watch me, see what I do, and then you begin to do it. You begin to imitate it. Here's what you need to realize, guys. You are imitating someone or something. You are, and that's going to offend some of you because you're like, no, I'm an original. You're not. You're not. Like if originality is your anthem, you need a new anthem because you're an imitator. You are. Tell me you're the first person to start wearing white tennis shoes. Tell me you're the first person to start wearing Chacos or high-top Vans. Tell me you're the first person to start wearing mom jeans or shopping at Lulu. You're not. Tell me you're the first person to start using words like shook or lit or bougie or Hundo P. I just learned that one today. We're all imitators, and that's okay. You've actually been wired by God to imitate, but He wants you imitating Him. You need to realize that you are naturally going to look out into this world and try and discern what is the ideal in this world. You are looking for someone to show you what is the ideal, and you're going to lock onto that person and you're going to seek to imitate them. Here's what I need you to realize. If you were to take this book and read it, specifically the first 4 books of the New Testament, which would be a great thing to do during this fall semester, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you know what you would see? You would see that Jesus Christ is the ideal. He is the ideal. And I promise you, if you begin to walk as Jesus walked, talk as Jesus talked, love as Jesus loved, care as Jesus cared, serve as Jesus served, I promise you, your life would be what you want it to be. It would be a compelling, winsome life. See, this is an invitation from Jesus to imitation. And when you respond to this invitation and you begin to imitate Jesus Christ, you know what ends up happening? You end up actually stepping into the purpose for which you've been created. If you're tuned out, I need you to tune back in, because what I'm drilling down on right now is the point and purpose of your life. Like, some of you guys showed up to school and you're like, man, I don't know where I'm at in life. Like, does my life really matter? Does it really count? Does my life really have meaning? What am I even supposed to do with my life? Right now, you're purposeless. It feels aimless. Well, let me just bring clarity right now. God's will for your life is to look as much like Jesus Christ as possible. That's it. And I get that from Romans 8:29. It says this, for those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. See, what this is saying is God's will for your life is to look as much like Jesus Christ as possible. When Jesus invites you to follow Him and become like Him, you know what He's doing? He's inviting you to come alive by stepping into the purpose for which you've been created. You want to feel alive. You want to feel like your life is working. I promise you it's going to come through imitation of Jesus. Because watch this, and don't miss this. You know what imitation leads to? Imitation actually leads to influence. See, we said that come follow me is an invitation to intimacy. It's an invitation to imitation. But it's also an invitation to influence. The imitation leads to influence. I love how things began to play out with these 4 guys, Simon and Andrew, James and John, because Jesus calls them to come and follow Him in Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. By the end of Mark chapter 1, these 4 guys have already seen Jesus cast out several demons, heal a bunch of sick people, and cure a guy of leprosy. And so what Jesus does is He brings them along, and He's just like, okay, observe me for a little bit. And then in Matthew chapter 10, verse 1, look at what it says. It says, Jesus called His 12 disciples to Him, and what did He do? He gave them authority to drive out impure spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. So you know what happens when you begin to imitate Jesus? When you begin to talk like Jesus, when you begin to love like Jesus, when you begin to serve like Jesus, you know what happens is your life begins to be a blessing to other people. You become an oasis for people in the midst of a desert. Just think about our world. Our world is full of negativity and hatred and prejudice and injustice. And you can be a place of refreshment as people look to you and find Jesus Christ in you. I mean, I was just thinking about Hurricane Harvey. We're a year out now from Hurricane Harvey. And I just think about how it was the followers of Jesus Christ who rose up in the midst of tragedy And it was on the news. It was amazing how the people of God stepped up and responded. I think about my friend Vim, who literally ran a military operation out of his home for those who had come to bring rescue in the midst of Hurricane Harvey. I think about my friend Pastor Greg Mott, the founding director of Breakaway, who in a sense became a pastor to the entire city of Houston, posting messages on Facebook, breathing hope into the city, and it landed him on CNN as he spoke hope to our entire nation. I think about my friends at Bayou City Fellowship, which is just one church amidst thousands in Houston. And just through this one church, they rescued 120 people. They cleaned up 800 homes and distributed $750,000 in funds and assets. Isn't that amazing? This is what happens when imitation leads to influence. These people were just doing exactly what Jesus would have done, and it led to influence. And then you think about what Jesus goes on to say right after he says, "Come follow me." What does he say? "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Jesus looks at these fishermen and he says, "I'm going to take you fishermen and I'm going to turn you into fishers of men." What's Jesus really saying? He's saying, I'm going to take you guys who have spent the majority of your lives taking fish that are alive that will soon be dead. And I'm going to turn you into men who are going to search after people who are spiritually dead, and I'm going to use you to make them spiritually alive. See, your salvation is for salvation. And Jesus is inviting you into something bigger than yourself. And God wants to use you to change someone's story. That because of what God does through you, someone's story could be, I was dead, and now I'm alive. This is what Jesus is inviting you into, and I just want you to see how things work. Where there is intimacy with Jesus, there will be imitation of Jesus, because the more time you spend with Jesus, the more you want to be like Jesus, and the more you're like Jesus, the more you will display Jesus to the world. See, intimacy leads to imitation, which leads to influence. This is the invitation that is on the table tonight when Jesus says to each one of us, "Come follow me." The question is, how will you respond? When I sat on that boat with Catherine, she had to make a choice. Will I respond yes or no? Are you in or are you out? Do you want to follow or not? Now, here's what I want to do with the remainder of my time. I just want to answer the question, what does it look like for you to respond to this invitation? More specifically, I want to answer the question, what does it look like to follow Jesus right here at Texas A&M University? Let's just be very specific. Here it is. Let me put this up on the wall. Following Jesus at Texas A&M University is a trajectory-shaping journey done in the context of community in which Jesus Christ is the reward and the goal. Let me just read that one more time. Following Jesus at Texas A&M University is a trajectory-shaping journey done in the context of community in which Jesus Christ is the reward and the goal. See, you need to know it's a trajectory-shaping journey. What I mean by that is following Jesus will change things. It will change things. Think about Simon, Andrew, James, and John. They were fishermen. Fishing was their identity. It was their livelihood. Jesus interrupts their lives with an invitation, and when they respond to his invitation, their nets drop. Their dad and their boats get left, and nothing was ever the same. You need to understand following Jesus at Texas A&M University is never meant to be convenient. It is meant to be consuming. Do you hear what I'm saying? Following Jesus isn't convenient, it is consuming. It will impact every aspect of your life. It'll impact how you talk and what you find funny and what you do on the weekend and how you view people and how you treat people and where you invest your time and who you date and what you do with your life. I just want to make two observations about these 4 fishermen. The first observation that I want to make is this: following Jesus meant valuing dependence more than control. Do you see that? Following Jesus for these 4 fishermen meant valuing dependence more than control. Did you see that Jesus didn't even tell them where they were going to go? He was just like, come follow me. Like, he gave them no indication of the future. There was no vision. It was just follow me. And what did they do? They left everything and went. How is that even possible? It's because I believe that their view of God was determining their response to God. And I believe that they were convinced that there was more joy, more pleasure, more purpose, more passion, more adventure waiting for them in God's plans for their lives than in their own plans for their lives. See, following Jesus requires you to come to a place where you realize that dependence upon Jesus is actually a trade up from control of your own life. If Jesus Christ, the one who is before all things, and in him all things holds together, is offering you the invitation to come and follow him, you would be foolish to sit and try and control your own life. See, dependence is much more valuable than control. The second thing that I want to observe is this: a yes to Jesus meant a no to other things for these disciples. You need to understand, if you're going to follow Jesus here at Texas A&M, a yes to Jesus might be a no to someone or something else. See, the disciples couldn't keep fishing and go follow Jesus at the exact same time. They couldn't hang in the boat with their dad and leave everything to follow Jesus at the exact same time. No, a yes to Jesus meant a no to other things. You need to know you might not be able to date that guy or girl and still follow Jesus. You might not be able to run with that same crew of girls and still follow Jesus. You might not be able to live with that same group of guys and still follow Jesus. I love what some pastor friends in Dallas at Watermark Community Church says. They say that following Jesus might require you to change your playmates and your playgrounds. Now, you might hear this and you're like, man, this is a little extreme. Come on, man, we're only into the second week of school. Can you just kind of taper back? This feels radical. Here's the deal. If Jesus Christ has called you to do this, it's not radical, it's normal. Like, this is the normal Christian life. Jesus invites you to come and follow him, and you respond. That's the normal Christian life. And Jesus hasn't given us the liberty of redefining the normal Christian life for what feels most comfortable and convenient for us. I do want to speak to a few of you here tonight. Maybe you're here tonight and you consider yourself a believer in Jesus Christ, but you're not following Jesus Christ. Maybe you have come into a place in your life where you realize that you're a sinner in need of a Savior. And you have put your trust in Jesus Christ as the one who came and dealt finally with your sin when he went to the cross. Maybe you know Jesus Christ as the one who conquered sin and death when he rose from the dead, and you have put your faith in him. You believe in Jesus, but you're not following Jesus. If that's you, let me just tell you this. The Bible never discusses an intermission between believing and following. It never makes room for an intermission. So if you're believing but not following, let me just say it's time to start following. In fact, believing should always just be the beginning of following Jesus Christ. Following Jesus at Texas A&M University is a trajectory-shaping journey done in the context of community. I love that Jesus calls the brothers together and they respond together. I want you to know that I believe that it is impossible to walk with Jesus on your own. It is impossible to walk with Jesus on your own. So can we quit playing the games of trying to find the perfect church or the perfect small group or the perfect friends? Would you just invest someplace, open up, be vulnerable, be known, and be encouraged? It's a trajectory-shaping journey done in the context of community in which Jesus Christ is the reward. Please don't miss what I'm telling you now. The reward for following Jesus is Jesus. Do you hear what I'm saying? The reward for following Jesus is Jesus. It's not God blessing you with a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's not God healing your loved one. It's not God helping you get into a student organization or landing the job that you want. The reward for following Jesus is Jesus. It's the sweet privilege of being fully known and fully loved by the one that we just sang about, our author, our maker, our ransom, our savior, our refuge, our hiding place, our helper, our healer, our blessed redeemer, our answer, our saving grace, our hope in the shadows, our strength in the battle, our anchor for all our days, the one who stands by our sides, the one who stood in our place, Jesus Christ. He's our reward. Following Jesus at Texas A&M University is a trajectory-shaping journey done in the context of community in which Jesus Christ is the reward and the goal. I've shared this before, but in the town that I used to live in, there's a billboard. As you drive down the road, it's just this black billboard that has two words written in white, and it's the words, "Use me." And every time I've seen that billboard, I've just thought, man, may that become the prayer of anyone who considers themselves a follower of Jesus Christ. May we get to a place where we say, God, use me to be a billboard for your greatness and goodness. See, following Jesus Christ is coming to a place, instead of saying, world, look at me, you begin to say, look at Jesus. He's the one who's our hope. He's the one who is our joy. He's the way, the truth, and the life. He is the one who can satisfy the deepest longings of your soul. So God, use me to point people to you. This life isn't about me. You don't exist for me. I exist for you. So would you put yourself on display through me? I want to show you a video now, just a testimony of a friend that perfectly just kind of packages this idea. She's an Aggie. She was an Aggie, and she perfectly packages this idea that following Jesus at Texas A&M is a trajectory-shaping journey in the context of community where Jesus Christ is the reward and the goal. Take a look.
Hi, my name is Jamila Cox. I was actually born in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and my parents moved us to the States when I was a year old. And even though I grew up in Texas, I was actually raised in a very traditional home, and part of that was being raised Buddhist. So every Sunday, my parents would take us to temple in Houston, and I was raised learning of the teachings of Buddha. Becoming Christian is considered more of an American thing, not a Sri Lankan thing. And so that meant being Buddhist and consistently going to temple and bringing offerings to temple and just participating in that traditional, way of life. Coming to A&M, I was nervous, but I was also just really pumped because growing up in a pretty strict home, this was the first time I had gotten some distance from my family. I would get a lot of questions about where I was born and what religion I was. And as I was answering them, I realized that I didn't really know how to answer those questions. I didn't really know what I believed truly. And so that kind of kickstarted me on a journey of searching for truth. I was walking on campus on Southside, going back to my dorm at Rudder, and I kind of ran across these older men on campus, and they were handing out some little books, and and I didn't know what they were at the time. So I actually grabbed one of the books. I put it in my pocket immediately and went to my dorm room. And I opened it up, and at the time I thought it was the full Bible, but it was actually just the New Testament. All of this material, all these new stories about Jesus I was learning, I had a lot of questions, naturally. I was just struck by the hope that Jesus offered, because in Buddhism, there really is not much hope to be found. There's such an emphasis on karma and what you do. I think that was the most appealing thing about Jesus for me, was it wasn't going to be about what I could bring. It was going to be about what he had already done. And so much of my life had been about what I could do, that this was like a free moment where it wasn't going to be about that. So after I was reading the Gospels, New Testament, I decided to place my faith in Jesus that November and begin a relationship with God. And I was just so excited and so full of joy that I wanted to go home and tell my family. There were a lot of things happening in my family at the time, so my parents ended up separating. But at the same time, I just started this new relationship with God, so I was just wanting to tell them what had happened and what I've learned, and I wanted to share it with them. So I had told my dad first, and it went pretty well for my dad. He's more of a social Buddhist, so it didn't really have a huge impact on him. But with my mom, that was really the more difficult conversation. And when I told her my decision to become a Christian and then also start going to church, local church in College Station, I just saw a look of like disgust in her eyes. And she's a very devout Buddhist. And so to her, this was a huge bad karma moment. She told me she was disappointed in me, and that while I was walking this path of Jesus and church and things like that, she wasn't going to be able to support me in that. And so that spring was actually the last time that we've gotten to communicate. But I've also gotten to see how, because I believed in truth, I just had found this new relationship that I knew was going to, have adversity, have pushback on, but it was going to be worth all of it because I knew and believed that this was true. And I so desired my family to also see that. And my prayer through all of it has been that I can experience both, that I can experience my relationship with God and my relationship with all my family members. But I've seen God move in some great ways over the last 8 years that I've been a Christian. In Psalm 27, verse 10, it talks about how when your mother and father shall forsake you, the Lord will take you in. After I told my family that winter break, I came back to school that spring, and I knew I needed more people around me, and I didn't realize at the time I just needed community. And so thankfully that was when my friend invited me to Breakaway, and I got to start coming, and I also started going to a local church, their college ministry. And that spring I got baptized and in Rudder Fountain, actually, which was really fun. After I graduated, a position opened up for me to apply for, and I came on staff. And then a year after that, got called, my husband and I, overseas to Greece to serve with Campus Crusade. And even there, our small ministry of Greek students, we follow Breakaway Podcast every Sunday for Bible study. As I look back to my freshman year at A&M, I'm just so amazed at how the Lord perfectly provided what was needed at every step of my relationship with him to, bring these men on campus that are faithful to hand out New Testaments, to a ministry like Breakaway that provided a place where I could meet other Christians my age and worship together and learn about him together, and then providing a way to go overseas to share about him. It's easy for me to believe that God's going to continue to do amazing things through Breakaway and expand and reach more students than ever.
Well, there's a group of students in Greece that watch Breakaway each week, so would you guys just give a huge howdy to the people that will be watching this in a couple weeks over in Greece, joining with us? Go ahead and give a howdy, just hello to them. That's good. I'm so thankful for Chamilla sharing her story, because I hope that you see it. Like, following Jesus for her has been a trajectory shaping journey. Like, her relationships with her family have been impacted by her choice to follow Jesus, but it's happened in the context of community that God has provided people to come alongside her and encourage her, and Jesus Christ has been her reward because she has found truth in Jesus. And not only that, now Jesus is her goal because she and her husband have taken the gospel now to a country in which there are 1.6% believing Christians. That's her story. What will be yours? The invitation to Chamilla is the invitation to you. Come follow me. How will you respond?